Hey everyone, welcome back to the DJ Sessions Presents the Virtual Sessions, where we feature the best DJs, producers, and industry professionals from around the world. I'm your host, Darren, and right now I'm sitting in the virtual studios in Seattle, Washington, and my guest coming in all the way from Los Angeles, California, Swedish Egil with Groove Radio. How you doing today, Swedish?
I am doing great. Thank you, my friend. Thank you for having me on the DJ Sessions. It's an honor to be here.
Absolutely. Hey, is that a virtual studio behind you, or are those actual CDs?
They're actual CDs. Yeah, it's not a picture. This is my actual sort of home studio, home away from home studio.
Guys, things didn't go the way it went with digital, and I used to have a large CD collection. I wonder if that's what my collection would look like now with all my iTunes albums and everything I have in the back. Wow, that's an awesome collection you got going on there. Well, you've been doing Groove Radio since 1992, the year I graduated from high school.
Wow.
And I just realized, we were talking a little bit about it before pre-show. This is your 30th anniversary you're coming up on, correct?
Yeah, for Groove Radio.
Yeah. And how many shows have you produced in that time?
So I used to work at a radio station here in Los Angeles called K-Rock, and I was there from 1982 to 1991. And then from 91 to 92 was at a radio station here in LA called Mars FM, which was the first radio station to play techno and house music on a regular basis, like in a typical radio format. Mm-hmm. And then in 1992, the general manager had a better idea. They thought they wanted to do something called Jazz FM instead of Mars FM. So we all left, all of us DJs left, and I started a syndicated show called Groove Radio, and the premiere show was on Halloween in 1982. So that's how we're coming up on our 30th anniversary for Groove Radio.
Wow, congratulations on that. I only wish we could hit those numbers someday. We got about 17 more years to go. But we'll get there.
Keep up the good work.
Yeah, it just seems like you've had a number of artists that have come on the show. And it's great. And it isn't just an interview show, is it? I mean, you do interviews, you do mixes. Tell our viewers a little bit about Groove Radio and what they can expect if they tune into it.
Okay, so we've gone through a lot of changes over the years. Groove Radio started out as a syndicated show, and I think we went live for the first time on FM here in Los Angeles in 1997. And then again, there, same owner as with Mars FM. He thought he had a better idea. He didn't, but we left. I started something called Eagle Music. I had a record label with Priority Records for a few years. I also did something called Groove TV, where we did like an hour live once a week from a small studio here in Los Angeles. But we had a lot of listeners. A lot of people liked what we were doing on Groove Radio. Groove Radio and Mars FM before that were very, very unique. And I have to add to that also, while I was working at K-Rock from 1982 to 1991, we broke bands like New Order and Depeche Mode and OMD and Tears for Fears and all these bands. And most of those bands had remixes done of their songs. So we were playing like vinyl 12-inch remixes of Depeche Mode, mixing into another vinyl 12-inch of like an OMD song. And that's how we were DJing in the 80s. And then as the music progressed, that went into acid house, industrial, eventually house music, progressive house, and then so forth and on and on and on to all the genres that we have today.
Mm-hmm. All the genres that we have today.
Yeah.
I try to do a Wikipedia search when I bring on resident DJs to the show. I say, you can choose the top level categories for your genres, but I'm not taking the subcategories as your top level genres. Uh-huh. I can't get into the progressive house, techno trance. That's the genre. Somebody would take the genre of that now and go, oh, I don't think that's how it works. But hey, it's music, it's art, it's how it can go, it's how it goes. Now, currently you're doing kind of an interview segment format. How does one get on Groove Radio?
Okay, so I had a studio in downtown LA for a while before COVID, and I was able to bring in people into the studio and do interviews live in the studio. Once COVID hit, I couldn't have any more people in the studio. I also live in an environment where we're really sensitive to COVID. So even though I'm vaccinated and boosted and all that kind of stuff, and so would my guests be, my living situation is not so that I can just willy-nilly meet with people anytime I want. So after about a year and a half, we were forced to close down the studio. It didn't make sense to have a studio in downtown LA when people couldn't come there anyway. So I moved Groove Radio back home to my home studio, and I do interviews much like what we're doing today, like either over this program or a Zoom program or something like that. And then very often I take, I've sort of always done this in my career. I try to help the artist. I try to help the DJs and the bands and the artists promote what they have out. You can talk about a lot of different things, but most people want their audience to know there's a new record out right now, and you should be paying attention to this because this is important. Then I find that information. I deliver that information in a brief setting, introducing songs and mixes from these different artists. And so if you want to get on Groove Radio, you can email Egil, EGIL, at grooveradio.com, and we'll take it from there.
Now, is it just musicians, producers, DJs, or is it anyone in the industry? Or
no,
what would be a typical guest that we would find on the show?
Yeah, musicians, DJs, and producers, not people in the industry, because I want to focus on the music. My interviews are not okay. So at some point they have been, when I was live from downtown LA, we would put people on for a minute, but after a while, no matter the conversation, people like to hear music. So we played videos and we played songs in between, and that's what I do now. Groove Radio International. I've been doing a lot of 1 hour takeover mixes because there was so much music out there from all these different genres, and I want to introduce as much of the new music as possible.
Yeah, I definitely can understand that development process, because when we originally started the DJ sessions, it was a kind of quick interview before the show and get to the music, and then a quick outro interview, and then a quick intro interview. And we were doing 4 hour blocks, like 4 DJs for 4 hours is how our show format goes. But, if one DJ went over a little bit, then it trickled down, and then the last DJ would maybe get like 20 or 30 minutes because we just have these interviews running the way they would. And then I kind of did away with that format, and just went all about the music.
Okay.
Because we were just doing the live streaming, and we have been podcasting live streaming since basically 2005. I started podcasting, but this series started in 2009.
Awesome.
And, again, has gone through some different reiterations, and we're now doing a whole nother rebrand right now where, yes, we have the music. Yes, we have the interviews, but we're expanding that out now to widen our base to basically all electronic music industry. I have like 7 different brands underneath the umbrella of the DJ sessions now, and you get an idea for a show and you make it want to happen. That sounds like how you kind of have morphed and grown and changed, and what fits your, no pun intended, groove.
Yeah, exactly. It's been a long time. I also spent a lot of time with a show here from Los Angeles that used to air on Power 106 called Power Tools with Richard Vision. And I was on that show as a permanent. The show started in 1991. I was a guest from 1991 to 2000, permanent host until earlier this year. And then earlier this year, again, kind of the same thing there is that we used to have a weekly meeting where all of us DJs would get together at a studio, bring in some guests and have a little chat. And not just the interview, but the whole chat and the camaraderie and all that was very important. Well, that evaporated with COVID. So I didn't continue with that. And,
And when did you take Groove Radio online? Was it online from its inception, or was it FM and then moved to online?
Groove Radio was, it came along in 1996, I think it was, 95, 96. Okay, so first at the same radio station, 103.1 here in LA, at Mars FM. And then we did Groove Radio on the weekends for a little bit because the owner was really intrigued about what I was doing, but he wasn't really ready to let go of his adult contemporary format. And you can imagine those people who would normally listen to an R&B style adult contemporary format, that they had to endure this music, techno music and drum and bass. I played some of my first drum and bass in 94 on 103.1 from midnight to 6 in the morning on Friday night and Saturday night. That was on that station. And around that time, before we came on 24/7 in 1996, different people helped me experiment with putting us on the internet. And I remember my wife, Anna, was really involved in putting on, for example, Orbital and Left Field and different artists that were broadcasting from the UK, and we would set up a mirror site, and we were doing all these super exciting things in the late 90s. And then in 2000, we signed up with a company called Enigma Digital, and they had 5 radio stations online, and we were one of them. And within a very short period of time, because there was very little competition, we were in the top 5 of the Nielsen ratings on the internet because, there wasn't very much competition. The BBC contacted us and asked if we wanted to have Pete Tong's mix show on our station. Ministry of Sound did parties with us at the Winter Music Conference in Miami, and it was a super exciting time. And then so we've been on the internet and just slowly growing and growing and growing with the internet ever since.
Yeah, it's that's a phenomenal story. That gives me a lot of inspiration. Being somebody who kind of believes in this and does something similar in the same kind of in the same kind of form. We used to have a radio show here called Groove Tech, and it was out of the back room of this record store, and they would invite DJs to come in and they play records, and then they would stream just audio out of it. And then I think they got at one point, it was early 2000, right before the internet boom happened. They were just about to get financing, and they had a little video going from it, I believe, for just a quick second, like a small little video you might be able to see playing. And the .com bust happened, and it just went away.
Yeah.
And so it was about 9 years later, I was at Winter Music Conference 2009. I was doing some interviews with some notable DJs, and this one DJ comes up to me and says, "Hey, I got this idea. I'm thinking about doing a live streaming DJ show." And I'm like, "You can't do that. The bandwidth's going to cost you. I'm a video guy. You can't know. I know what it costs." At that time, I think I was running out of my apartment like 9 different internet radio stations just off my server. And I take local people and I put it out there, and it was listed in iTunes and all that fun stuff. It was just something having fun, but it wasn't like, it was just something that experimenting, trying to say, I want to have this as part of my brand. And we started doing the live streaming stuff. And it was very interesting to see that kind of take off and go that way. But kind of lost my thought on that one. There was something I was going to ask you out of all of that.
Well, it wasn't. It was a very, very exciting time, because I remember in 2000 having people in the Groove Radio studio, and we would be on the internet for we have like a little chat window. People could talk to us, and then we'd go off and they'd lose the signal, and then the signal would come back on, and the audience were super understanding of everything, and they just were super part of it. But the fact that basically for the first time really in my DJ career, I could put a person in the studio with a camera on them and interview them, and that changed everything. That really changed everything. And then I tried to do as much of that as possible. And of course, we ran into all of those problems you just mentioned growing up and eventually ending up with a studio in downtown LA. But yeah, it was a very exciting time.
I think the one thing that I love the most is that I had all this video gear, and it's in there, and the maximum bandwidth that I could get in on a business account was supposed to be a 2 megabit upload speed, which really translated to 0.5, 0.6 megabits. And I go back and look at some of these old episodes, and I'm like, we were really pushing that content. People were watching, and that was cutting edge at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Now you got 4K and all this, and Zoom and everything's out there. It's really awesome. But well, again, congratulations on keeping it going all these years.
You.
And the question is now that we've looked at online, I started in public access and went to broadcast television to podcasting. Sounds like you went from kind of FM radio to digital radio, and now digital to kind of in the digital realm, kind of there came podcasting and live streaming. Is that how your progression was as well?
Sort of. I guess from FM broadcasting and then to television first, like broadcast TV. Okay. And then in 1998, I was hired by CD Radio, which later on became Sirius XM, and I'm still there doing an 80s show on something called First Wave, a channel that's dedicated to classic 80s alternative music. So I was part of that for a while. And in the beginning, you know, a lot of people thought that the satellite was really cool, but not a lot of people had receivers. And a lot of the people in the satellite world didn't really know what was going to be happening to the internet and didn't have so much confidence in the internet. Now they have really merged, and Sirius is like they're, you know, doing great with the satellite. And then they have like over 200 stations on the internet. So there's a lot of variety.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was the one thing when we got into podcasting in 2005, when we moved away from broadcast television, because we could only get time slots in our local markets at like 1:30 in the morning.
Right.
To put our shows on, because everything was always purchased out by, you know, you had all the programming that was purchased out by the networks.
Yeah.
So we'd be airing our shows at 1:30 in the morning. But once, you know, it was funny because we looked at YouTube when it came out as a medium, but we didn't like it because it was we saw everyone talking to a camera.
Right.
And we were like, we're a broadcast television show. We're not people talking to a camera. That makes no sense. And we kind of just missed that wagon just a little bit. But podcasting came out, and we got into podcasting. Once the video iPod came out, that was a game changer for us, because now we could put our shows on. People could subscribe. They could watch them online. They could stay online. We could put them on a server. It wasn't a one and done kind of broadcast. And then they could also take it with them on the go with their new video iPod.
Right.
That just we went after that. Plus, our costs of airing, as you know, airing shows on broadcast television like this, compared to this. I went from, you know, thousands of dollars a week to $15 a month on a GoDaddy hosting account, doing terabytes of data, you know, over years. And anyways, it's a wonderful ride. But, you know, the new thing that I'm looking at, I'm talking with a lot of people about this, is virtual reality, and where virtual reality and what it's going to do for music, entertainment. And have you been looking to do anything in virtual reality, or have you done anything in VR yet?
No, not really. I don't think. So I'm not that technically minded. My engineer, his name is Terry Bradshaw, and we may be approaching that. But I think that the sort of basic format that we have right now, especially with my limited ability to go and meet people in person, but maybe doing it over Zoom or the program that you're using, is that many times less is more. So like, there's all this great new music coming out, and I'm concentrating on 5 or 6 artists that we add every week to our playlist. We play music on grooveradio.com 24/7. I add 5 new songs every week. We take some older songs out. And I have a show or a feature called the Top 5 Grooves that runs several times throughout the week, introducing those 5 songs, what they're all about, what those artists are all about, what their new records are, what their tour is looking like. And then it's just more and more and more of that. And I don't know that, I probably don't know enough about virtual reality. So like, what would be the thing in a perfect world that you would want to do the most? What's your number one thing that you want to do? Oh, I got virtual reality. I'm going to.
I look at it from the ability that I see it as the new website platform, a way that we can bring, that kind of audience into a brand new space that, I used to play this. Well, I say play, but do this thing called Second Life back in the day. I don't know if you ever heard about Second Life, but it was kind of a sandbox environment. You go in, you create, and it was just really awesome. And it wasn't there to what we can do now. Now I put my headsets on. I have 2 virtual nightclubs. I could take an artist, put them on Twitch, and stream them live into the nightclub. Or I could do this interview could be watched by people in the nightclub in like an IMAX theater format.
Right.
And be mingling and hanging out, rather than just the 2-dimensional chat room that we have now, which I loved. I've loved that idea that people can interact. Ever since I was doing broadcast television shows, we had a chat room online when our shows were live our shows were on the air. You could chat with us while our shows were on the air. But having that interactivity and the design, and I just think it's in its infancy, where people like, I don't need something in VR. Like, I remember that question or that same thing being said when bands and artists were saying in the early 2000s, or even in the beginning of the social age, we don't need a website. We have a MySpace page.
Yeah.
It's like, no,
Yeah.
no. What do you? Of course you need a website. Just get a domain name. It's like $10.
Yeah.
But websites weren't as easy to create.
Yeah.
As they are now.
I think the most important thing you said is that interaction, that live chat room while you're live, being live, and that interaction with the audience is the most important thing. And if you can do it in a sophisticated way, like virtual reality, and people can dress up and, speak into a virtual microphone and, whatever they want to do. And you can then also showcase the artist in that. I think that's very, very cool. I think it's a little ways off because it's, I think it takes a lot of involvement on the listener's part. Like he's got to put on the headset and the headphones got to be all plugged up and you got to know how to operate it and all those different things. It's a lot different than flipping on your phone or putting up your iPhone and watching an interview. But I do think it's coming. I do think it's coming. And I think that the driving thing behind it all is the interaction with the audience and the guests. And if they can interact together, that was the thing that we started to do a little bit, to have 2 Zooms on at the same time, and a guest ask the guest, the star, the DJ, a question, and then them being able to answer them back. And I was out of the conversation. I'm just sitting there listening to it.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of moving parts that go on with it. It's not just this as simple as putting something in there, and then you have to find a developer, and then you got to find where you're going to deploy it. It's not like website creation. And I think you're right. I think it will get up to an ease of use in a couple of years where people can kind of go, oh, here's my world, and you can go visit me here. You don't need a headset, or you can go watch me here on Twitch, or there's going to be a whole new dynamic audience coming into play. And
yeah,
I think I look at it as the new website frontier, though.
Yeah,
you're going to be able to go in and take our DJ Sessions website or take your Groove Radio website and be able to walk into different rooms and sit in this room and watch these shows, or sit in this room and watch these shows, or walk over here and go shopping in the merch store for your avatar, and those old radios playing over the environment as they're walking through this really cool environment that you can design. And that could be a tropical theme or a neo techno, Tokyo Blade Runner theme, or whatever that theme is. It's just a passion. I always just pick people's, trying to get people's thoughts on where they see virtual reality going.
I'm totally down with you, Darren. And once you get it up and running, I want to be one of your first guests. Sounds great.
I would love for that to happen. It's already devved. We got it up and running. We're doing some aesthetics. I kind of think of it like building a house.
Yeah.
We've laid the foundation. We've got the cabling, the internet, and everything is in there. We just now got to hang the paintings on the wall.
Okay,
that's
sounds
right
good.
Where we're at. We're that close. And definitely, I would love to take you on a tour sometime as well.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
You're down in LA. And we just actually expanded down to Arizona. I don't know if you got a chance to check out our site or not, but we do something called the mobile sessions.
Okay.
Have you ever seen the big glass box trucks that drive around with advertising in them?
No. I don't think so.
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, right? In the great glass elevator. Think about that on the back of a truck with DJs playing in with a concert grade sound system.
Wow.
So we've been doing that for a while, and we just launched a truck in LA. So we're expanding the Southwest division. I would love to come down and visit you and bring the truck out to LA.
Yeah.
With you out there.
Absolutely.
So
when are you going to be in LA? Do you have a date?
Don't have a date. The truck's being built out right now. 2 weeks from now, it should be finalized. And then we're going to start building our schedule out.
Okay.
Because we'll have clients down in Arizona, but we're a hop, skip, and a jump to Vegas and LA with the truck. And we plan to be doing stuff all over down in the Southwest.
Okay. Sounds
I'll
good.
Be in contact with you. But to business, let's talk a little bit about business. What has been the best business decision in favor of your artist or your DJ career? Sounds like you've had a lot, but
yeah. I think being totally honest about what I like. So when I started DJing in my home country of Sweden in 1969. I moved to America in 1976. I was playing disco music. And then I played disco music all the way up until 1982. A little bit of country too, as a matter of fact, in between because of Urban Cowboy. But in 1982, started working at K-Rock. And K-Rock was a radio station that played alternative music. We did not play your typical mainstream top 40 music. Mainstream top 40 were bad words. They were words that like described a different style of music than what we were playing. So when people were, I don't want to say artist names necessarily, but we were playing The Cure, Susie and the Banshees, Depeche Mode, The New Order. I remember driving down to LAX to the airport, going to I think the company was called American Imports, and the guy gave me a white label test pressing of New Order's Blue Monday and said, I think this is going to be a big hit. And that became their biggest vinyl selling 12-inch of all time. And so I've always been playing the alternative music, not going with the mainstream, not going where everybody else are going, but sort of forging ahead my own path, or looking at other people that I respect a lot, the people that have come across, early in my career, met Paul Oakenfold, still working with him, met Carl Cox, he impressed me a lot, John Digweed, Sasha, some of the, the DJs that I met early in my career.
You're speaking to my heart, Egil.
and they were all and are still doing the alternative stuff. Like, they are not really going with the mainstream. They're part of the underground. And so, I saw Electric Daisy Carnival and Pasquale, come up here doing small events and growing up to what the big events are today, but, taking chances on many artists and DJs and producers long before everybody else caught on. So I'd say that sticking with what I really believe in has been the best business decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely, I hear a lot of people when I interview them on the show, and kind of like what makes them happy, or the same kind of question. And they're like, making sure I'm in control of doing what I want to do makes me happy, rather than trying to go after the money or the fame, or partying too much, or doing all that. I was just talking with, I was talking with a DJ earlier this week, and he goes, I do it all for myself. I mean, he manages events, big events, 10,000, 15,000 person events, but he has now 100% control of what he has to do. It's not running around, like a chicken with his head cut off all over the world trying to make a living. He now has it reign, and he can say, nope, I don't want to do that, or yes, I do want to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a really comforting thing. And that taps into my entrepreneurial skill too. I worked for corporate America for years until 2009. I kind of said the big c'est la vie, or other fingers you could put up to a company I still respect. My last job was working corporate America for Apple, and I loved working for them, but I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and I need to be able to have that kind of control to make myself happy. I can't come into work at 6 o'clock or be at work at 7 o'clock and then get home at 7 o'clock at night and then live for the weekend and want to have a hobby. I want to do my passion and do what I want to do.
Yeah.
So
sticking to your guns.
Yeah, sticking to your guns is always awesome. And what defines success for you? I mean, 30 years in the game, numerous different projects. Have you succeeded yet?
Yeah, I think so. I've been doing this for 30 years with my wife, Anna. We came up with the name together. I was going to do an interview with such a long time ago. Fierce Ruling Diva. Now it was some other act. Anyway, I had an interview lined up at Mars FM, and the interview didn't come through. No, the interview came through, but Praga Khan. I'm sorry, Praga Khan. I was going to do an interview with Praga Khan, and it was Destructo worked at a small little record company called the White Label with a big time rock producer Rick Rubin, and they had just started his label. And the first act was Praga Khan, and we were playing Praga Khan in full rotation on Mars FM. And then the radio station came and said, okay, we're closing down the station today, kicked us all out. And we stood in the parking lot. What the hell are we going to do right now? And I got an interview lined up tomorrow. Praga Khan flew in from frickin' Belgium to come and be on the station. And they're sitting at their hotel in LA right now, waiting for me to come over. So I went home and talked to my wife. We talked, and somehow she came up with the name Groove Radio. And I said, that's a fantastic name. And then I went to do the interview with Prager Khan, and I just went there and say, hey, I'm Swedish Egil from Groove Radio. I'd like to do an interview with you right now. And that interview aired on the first program of Groove Radio International, which then ended up being a syndicated show. I was able to maintain my friendship with Destructo and not let them down. So that was the very beginning. Then having done many of these interviews and the people that we met and the events that we've been part of and the broadcast that we have done, and we've always been at the cutting edge. So being on the cutting edge doesn't necessarily means the biggest financial income, but it means that you get to do maybe what you like. And, we've taken many risks, and we've taken some risks that didn't pan out all the way. But all in all, after 30 years, I'm very proud of what we've been doing. Wouldn't have been able to do it without my wife, who is, the background and the backbone of our radio station. I raised a beautiful daughter who now just, I'm a grandfather now to little Izzy Jean, 6 months old. So,
congratulations.
Thank you very much. So it's been really, really good from that point of view. And I still could go out and DJ, but like I said, with COVID, I'm skeptical. I was just reading the Chemical Brothers, were somebody I met when they first came on the scene, met them here in LA. They were even called the Dust Brothers before they were the Chemical Brothers. And I have an ID where Ed and Tom are introducing themselves as Ed and Tom from the Dust Brothers, and you're listening to Groove Radio. That's kind of cool. But I saw that they canceled the show this month or next month in England. So they're going to do the show next year because of COVID. And like I said, I'm in a sort of COVID-sensitive environment. So I'm not really sure when I'm going to be able to go out and DJ. I also sort of have Swedish Egil as also an 80s DJ. I was there breaking these bands. I was there hanging out with Depeche Mode and OMD and Tears for Fears. These are people that came into the radio station at K-Rock when I was there. We were DJing, and I haven't necessarily been real close friends with them, and I think that they would recognize me. I met them over the years, and I still DJ. I have a partner whose name is DJ Robin, and we go out and do some 80s gigs. I DJ, and he supplies the equipment and a lot of the technology and the know-how. It's a great DJ. I used to work with him back at Mars FM 30 years ago. And so I have sort of two DJ careers, the 80s and the modern electronic dance music. And I think that being able to do both of those for all this year, for freaking over 40 years, it's pretty cool.
I couldn't agree with you more. I look up to you. I do. I look and see, like, am I going to be able to be just like Swedish when I'm a little older? A little older. You don't look like you're that much older than I am.
No.
I mean, I did graduate high school in '92 when you started doing the show, but
couple of years, maybe.
Couple of years, but that's just awesome. That's an awesome story, success story, and thank you for sharing that with us. And I'm glad you brought it up that you still DJ and do that. As a DJ, do you follow the charts, like as what's hot, what's going on? Like, are you out there looking at the top Beatport, top tracks, or do you just follow your heart? Like something comes in and says, "I'm putting that in my show. I don't care." A
combination of both. Mm-hmm. So, not really. Okay, so maybe it's John Summit, who is number one at the moment on Beatport. Could very well be with Chicago. I love John Summit. Think he's a great freaking house producer. I think that song Chicago is freaking awesome. I think that Latin song that came out before it is another reason he had 2 songs in the top 10. And I like John Summit. And I like John Summit long before anybody says that you have to like John Summit or he had a big hit record. But when he ends up at number 1, I'm looking at the Beatport chart and I'm going, yeah, I'm already playing that. That's number 1. That's good. Check that off. Sometimes I see something on there. I've never heard of this name before, but this song is number 5. I got to check out and see what that is. Many times I go, oh, I see why it's number 5. They took an old song and they remade it. And I didn't like that original song to begin with. So I ain't playing this. Or it could be somebody brand new, some brand new producer just up and coming, like John Summit when he came on the scene. And I go, man, this guy is something else.
Wait a second. John Summit, that name rings a bell. You know why?
Why?
My UK PR guy is reaching out to him to get him on our show. I just had a conversation with him earlier today, and I'm like,
oh,
wow. I'm like, why was that on Frame of Mind when you were bringing him up? That's so crazy.
Yeah. You got to put him on. He's from Chicago. He's
Yeah.
really, really talented. And one of his fortes is that his productions are so freaking clean and good and thick and rich, and he's got it down.
I can't wait. I hope, fingers crossed.
Yeah, me too, for you.
Some people get so, I mean, the coolest thing that I've ever had happen, that I've met ever since I first started doing interviews, which is funny because you dropped the name earlier, was Paul Oakenfold was the first ever celebrity DJ I interviewed. Unfortunately, there were some technical difficulties because I'd gotten some new gear and I wasn't able to salvage the interview with them. And I was a little bummed, but I had bought his album in, I think it was the Groove, Global Underground 007 album.
Mm-hmm.
Was the first album.
Mix CD.
Yeah, the mix CD that I bought, double disc collection. Yeah. And they had everyone on. You mentioned Sasha, Digweed. They had I always say it, John. It's Tangelia. Danny, I always say his
Danny
last name.
Tenaglia.
Danny
Tenaglia.
Yeah, Danny was on there. I mean, they had tons of people on those discs. And but Paul Oakenfold was the first one I ever did. So when I got the interview with him, I was all, but I handled it smooth. I did a really great interview with him. But it wasn't until I got Dave Dresden on a few years later. And I had interviewed some people before them, but brought Dave Dresden on the live stream. And that kind of kicked it off for me in the whole show. But yeah, I mean, being able to follow your heart, but also kind of you got to kind of follow what's going on, what the trends are. I was looking at a website. I think it's 1001 track lists.
Yeah. Important.
And, they have a really great comprehensive report that comes out that is showing like tech house is one of the top genres right now.
Yeah.
But then I'm talking with some people and they'll say, well, what do you think is going to come back next? And they think, well, we think techno is going to make a breakthrough next, because everything kind of goes in waves is how people characterize it. And I'm just like, yeah, I wonder, it's just an interesting ride to see the rise of electronic music. And I call it electronic music. I don't use that other moniker because
that's exactly. The other moniker, EDM, gives the wrong impression. I wanted to say. I also think that you're on the right track with the techno music. I think that when you get major DJs to get behind a sound or a genre, then that it's more than like a fad. So Hardwell is about to release a brand new album. He just released a brand new song called Pac-Man. He broke his 4-year silence and hiatus at the Ultra Music Festival earlier this spring and played and DJ'd and came out with new music for the first time in 4 years. And his new style is techno music. Techno music, though, is really cool, but it's too hard for the mainstream. It's never going to go as big as tech house because tech house is it's broader, but it has many of the elements that techno music have.
Yeah.
I also wanted to interject for a quick second and tell you that in 2000, this company contacted me. They were called Enigma Digital, and they said, we're going to set up a hub of radio stations on the internet for the first time, 5 radio stations. We want you to be one of them. And I'd been talking with a guy online, and many times he was a writer for different music magazines and wrote columns and stuff like that. His name was Dave Dresden. So I called him up again, and we had chatted many a times about, doing a radio station and stuff like that. And I said, Dave, I got a radio station. Do you want to come out to LA? He lived in Connecticut. So he said, yeah, I'll come out. So he moved out to Los Angeles and became the music director and evening drive on grooveradio.com in 2000. Then maybe in 2001, we went to the Winter Music Conference, and Dave and what's his partner's name in
Gabriel.
Yeah, Josh Gabriel.
Josh Gabriel.
We were walking down like Main Street in Miami and ran into Josh Gabriel, who I had met before, chatted a little bit. Josh gave Dave a record, and the two of them became super close friends. And then because we were working with Pete Tong, we were broadcasting with the BBC, Dave got to meet Pete Tong, and said, we can do this for you. And then Paul Oakenfold came along, and a couple of the first Gabriel and Dresden remixes that they did were for artists connected to Pete Tong and to Paul Oakenfold. One of them, New Order, another one, Paul Oakenfold's original songs. And Dave Dresden and I have been, close buddies ever since. He lives in a different city, but, he was with us on Groove Radio for a long time.
That is phenomenal, and I'm tagging him when this gets live.
Yeah.
He sometimes chimes in when I post a Facebook article and say, I'm interviewing so-and-so from this right now. Anyone got any questions? And he'll come in and give me some way off history tidbit of something I would never find or discover. And I go, I'll put that in the interview.
Yeah, great guy.
The Facebook algorithms, when he gets to see it, coming through. He's such a great guy and really was awesome and has been supportive of our show for years. So that's an awesome. Thank you for that. That was I definitely appreciate that.
I'll tell you another story, a little bit of a story. So I met Paul Oakenfold also during the 90s, like the super early Winter Music conferences in Miami. We became friends, and I've been producing his radio show, Planet Perfecto Radio, for over 20 years. It's been a long, we produced close to 1,000 shows for Paul Oakenfold, and I'm going to see him again next week.
Another, like I said, legend in my book. I mean, just somebody that
definitely a legend.
It's just, it's so awesome when you meet somebody who's kind of what you're doing. Again, I really look up to and see as like a mentor of us starting this out in the beginning. And now obviously there's a lot of other shows out there online, people doing certain things. Technology has made it easier. Like the first guy I ever started in public access with, we could put on one public access show every 30 days, Giorgio Brown and the Cool Out Network. And it would air on public access on channel 72 on cable, at 3:00 in the afternoon or whenever it was. But, when I came to him and said, look how much content I'm producing, he goes, you got to understand we didn't have the technology. We were shooting with a VHS camera, some VHS decks, and then having to submit a tape. We didn't have to buy the beta gear and do broadcast television stuff. And even if we did, we'd have one episode per week. Now you got, the amount of content that I'm able to churn out and push out and do is just phenomenal. But 1,000 episodes, and that's just, that's 20 years. That's once a week.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
It is just doing once a week. But, I got a question for you. Do you remember the first record you ever bought to spin as a DJ?
Probably a song by James Brown. So I told you I started DJing in Sweden in 1969.
Okay.
Around that time, maybe a few years earlier, there was a pirate radio station between Malmö and Copenhagen called Radio South, and they played really, really cool music. And one of the guys affiliated with the radio station had a record store in my hometown of Malmö, Sweden, and I would go there, and he brought in imports from America. And so I was playing a lot of soul and funk music in the beginning of my career. And Tina Turner and like not all of them, right there at 1969, but like the Temptations, Papa Was a Rolling Stone, The Undisputed Truth, Rare Earth, Motown, Atlantic Records. That was the stuff that we were playing, and freaking everything by James Brown. And the interesting thing back then was that they already had like extended versions of the songs, and they called it part 1 on side A of a little 45 and part 2 on the B side. And I wasn't musical enough to figure out exactly how to blend those two together and get them to extend. So we did a little talking in between, but like he'd sing on the first record, it'll be instrumental on the second part of the song, but the crowd loved it. And so that's what I was doing then. And then when I started Groove Radio, I started producing the mixes on reel to reel. So I had like a Revox reel to reel, and then would sit here in my studio and edit those pieces of tape together if I needed to do an edit. And, not to have to do too many edits, you would practice and make sure that you can do it in one live take so that, minimize the edits a little bit. So yeah, there was I remember then going eventually to digital, and then it was a lot easier, and then things have progressed there since then.
Yeah, it definitely, with like in the video world, the advent of Final Cut Pro and camera costs coming down, or camera quality going up and the costs coming down, made it easier for us to get into broadcast television, or at least get decent quality. But we still had to wait a few years for video to go online.
Right.
And just recently I found out, I should have been on top of this, and this kind of lead into our next question, that Spotify acquired Anchor. And now, in just last April, I wasn't able to get my podcast to Spotify. Some of the places where people were putting their podcasts up were audio only podcasts. Just found out recently that Spotify will take video podcasts now if you submit through Anchor.
Oh,
I was
okay.
like, whoa, I just jumped on that. And
yeah,
seeing how quick, when I put an episode online and then I can search for it. I did this today looking for an artist, and I literally uploaded the episode onto YouTube, and it already came up in the YouTube results on the Google results.
Right.
And I did this within Spotify as well with some artists that we put into Spotify. And within like the moment they were submitted in Anchor to Spotify, they were listing in Spotify. I typed in this name in the search bar in Spotify, and our episode listed at the top of the latest episode that person had performed in. I was like, I like this.
Yeah.
But it wasn't always that way. You had to submit to each individual site.
Yeah.
Headache, and YouTube was one of those places you went to. But this leads me into a question for you, though. Do you feel that it is good or bad that Beatport has so much influence on the electronic music scene? Or do you think it actually has a ton of influence on the...
I don't know. It doesn't have that much influence on me. It just, like I said, it reminds me sometimes a little bit of a record I may have forgotten about, but that's about it. Mm-hmm. They like I can go on there, Melodic House and Trance chart, and go, man, that song's been the same for a month. Or I can go on there and song number 2 sucks. How did it get on there? So it's never been like that for me. I know that people that makes charts, they play games, and they have been for as long as I've been in the industry. It used to be called payola when I worked at K-Rock. And the reason that K-Rock became so successful is because we gave a big fat middle finger to payola for many different reasons. That's how we ended up playing music we wanted to play, not what the record companies wanted us to play. Yeah. We weren't on their agenda. We weren't going to add a new single because they were going to come and tour in America. F that. So I think, being independent like that, has been very beneficial to me for a long time. Another guy who's been really instrumental in my career, maybe one of the most instrumental guys, his name is Tony Prince. Are you familiar with DMC, the DMC championships?
No.
Okay. No. Well, okay. You have to Google this. So it's called DMCworld.com, and DMC has been around since the early 80s. DMC stands for the Disco Mix Club. It kind of dropped the word disco many, many years ago. The founder of it, his name is Tony Prince. He was a DJ on Radio Luxembourg, a radio station that was very, very influential for me in Europe. He also started Mixmag magazine, and then later on sold Mixmag magazine, still operating DMC. And he introduces new music, has all kinds. His thing all along has been to be able to provide DJs with either remixes or mega mixes of stuff that you can't easily find, and then make it available for DJs to play with all the rights paid for and everything like that. And Tony Prince, guided me to come to America. And then when DMC was expanding here in America, we ran the DMC West Coast office. We provided product to the record stores here in the LA area, and had a really good relationship with them. We put on a DMC championship contest where DJs were doing DJ trickery and DJ art on the turntables, and Qbert won that West Coast heat, and then went on to become the American champion, and then went on to become the world champion. And I developed a little bit of a friendship with him because of all of that. And so there was, a different style of DJing. I never got into scratching or DJ manipulation in that way, but had a lot of respect for it. And Tony Prince and DMC are still doing this contests all over the world.
Now, I'm probably going to get you in trouble with this next question, but who is your favorite DJ besides yourself, and can you tell us why?
Ooh. So yeah, okay. So I guess when you have the question like that, who is your favorite DJ? I would say that would be based on the DJ skills that they have to manipulate records. Because otherwise, DJ producer kind of takes it into a different realm, and then it would be based on the productions that they do. So my favorite DJs of all DJs is Carl Cox. I met him really early in his career through Destructo, and was able to hear and see what he was doing. Destructo put out these mix cassettes, like a mixtape, like the original mixtapes, right? And he had Carl Cox make a mixtape, and then they took the reel-to-reels, I think, into the studio and then pressed up whatever they were selling it as. But Destructo gave me the original take off of the cassette. They recorded a cassette. And that was one of the first DJ mixes that I played on Groove Radio. So I analyzed that mix a lot, and then met Carl many, many times and saw him DJ from the turntables and 3 turntables and playing 4 turntables at the same time, to eventually go into what he's doing today with the CDJs and blah, 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 all the way up. And he's always blowing my mind. I'm going, how? And the guy has just such control over his hands and his fingers and his ears. When it comes to making the music, I think that's almost in a very, very difficult very, very difficult question to answer, because it's so evolving. Like, I think back about my early DJ career, and I would get a record from, James Brown, and I'd be playing that song for like 5 years, and it was still like the hot song. And he had come out with maybe other songs in between, but like, the song lasted for that long or longer. I'm playing 80s music that people now 40 years later are going, wow, this is my favorite style of music. Well, I've never been like that. I have never gotten stuck in one time or an era or a sound. Always impressed going forward with a myriad of different sounds. So at the moment, I have so many different producers. And I guess one of the guys at the top of the list at the moment is John Summit. Though he's not 100% perfect, but he's a really, really good producer.
Awesome. I think, Carl Cox is definitely one of the stars we're shooting for to get on the show. I've talked, his PR manager is Dave Dresden's PR manager at least still. And I've always, every time I see her post online, I'm like, Carl's doing this, Carl's doing that. I got this PR. They send us all the information. I'm like, hey, can we get an interview with the guy? Like, what's going on? It's kind of our one thing that we're heading for there. But yeah, and you brought up John Summit again. And, again, I'm going to go back to hit my guy up and say, hey.
Yeah, he's the man. I mean, he's like really the man right now. I think a lot of people are paying attention to what he's doing because he's restrained. He's not over the top. He's definitely not cheesy. And his production is just, it sounds so freaking good. And, like many times when I hear a song, I wish I could have told the producer while he was making the record, remember, less is more. And whatever sample it is, they've just overused it a gazillion times. And after a while, the song burns out in a couple of weeks. And,
Yeah. And such is the way, I mean, I was just talking about this with my friend last night. 20 years ago, I mean, I had a cell phone 20 years ago. And 30 years ago, I had a cell phone. In 1992, I was 18 years old. But people didn't have cell phones. We consumed what the media, what we were fed.
Yeah.
If you wanted to go underground, you went to that music store and you'd have to find the flyer, go to the place, get the egg, get the phone number, dial the phone number, however that went. I went to some of those kind of parties. But nowadays, with everything being accessible right in the palm of our hands, and we can just Shazam it, get it, buy it, store it, and all of a sudden you get these libraries of music and content that's just so easily accessible. How do you sort through what's hot, what's not? And I mean, you kind of explain how you do it. You follow by your heart, you follow the charts. But from an outside perspective, if you're being hit, I think they say that there's 1 million videos a minute being uploaded to YouTube.
Wow.
That was back when I was going back to school for my second degree, when I was taking a marketing class, I think in 2017-ish, 2016, 2017-ish. Don't know what that's today, but TikTok just surpassed.
Wow.
As the most downloaded, as the most watched. It's surpassed Facebook, even Google, I believe. It surpasses the most go-to website around, with that kind of consumption of media. And they're talking about the whole rise of the artist that is now making it big by having their song played in TikTok, and then other people make the TikToks using that song. And it's a very interesting landscape to what kind of you and I grew up in. Like you said, you had that record you could play for 5 years, and still be a hit. I tell everyone that when I meet them, I say, "Hey, you want me to calm down? Put on some 70s disco music or some 80s pop, and I will try to be as pissed off as I can at you, but I can't." No, now I gotta dance. Okay, what was I mad about? You're right. Forget about it. Let's go have a beer. I mean, that's just how I am.
That's funny, Darren. That's funny.
But again, we had the radio to listen to, and then you went to the store, you bought the cassette tape, you got the label, and then I think when the CD came out, and you could put that song, I used to just put a CD on. I put one song on and leave it on repeat for 4 days on my CD player, just playing in the background.
Yeah.
Or you could program the tracks in the CD player to play in a certain order.
Yeah.
So you could take your favorite hits, and you wouldn't have to be rewind, fast forward, or drop the needle back and forth. And
yeah,
it's changed a lot. So, thank you so much for coming on the show. One last question I'd like to ask, though, before I ask my last 2 questions. So I guess my third to last question is, if somebody wrote a biography about you, what do you think the title should be?
DJ at heart.
The Eagle story?
Yeah, maybe. My parents got me a turntable when I was 7 years old. Bill Haley's Rock Around the Clock, I think, was the first record I had. And it never stopped. I turned that turntable into a little DJ setup. I built my own stereo and kept collecting music until 1969 when I got my first DJ gig, and then I got money to buy records, and I haven't stopped since then. So it's been about that the whole time, and maybe the Eagle story, but the Swedish Egil, DJ at heart.
There we go, Swedish Egil, DJ at heart. I love it. That is definitely a story I would want to read. And now, is there anything you want to let our DJ Sessions fans know about before we let you get going?
Well, if you want to send me some music, I'm always up for listening to new music. So here's a couple of tips if you're going to send me some music. Send one song only. I don't care if you worked on an album for a year and you want to share all the great music with me. You need to pick out the most important song and give that to me. If I really like that song, we can talk about the rest of the album, but one killer song. And then send that to Egil, EGIL, @grooveradio.com. And I don't care what genre it is or what your background is, or if the song is good, I'm going to hear it. We're going to hear it, me and my wife in our music meeting, or you can send it to, better yet, send it to Groove, GROOVE, @grooveradio.com. Groove@grooveradio.com. That'll get directly to me.
You're making me work over here. update lower thirds and stuff on the fly.
There you go. Perfect. Very awesome. Good, Darren. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I assume everyone just can find everything about you at grooveradio.com as well.
Correct.
That one in the queue.
Yeah.
Ready to go. And thank you again for coming on the DJ Sessions. It was a pleasure. I'd love to follow up with you again next 6 months or so, touch base. Oh, are you going to any of the music festivals later this year, or are you planning to
no,
stateside or stay?
Yeah, I'm staying playing it safe. What was your final question? You had one final. You said you had 3.
Oh.
You asked me 2.
Well, we kind of did one of them already. It was
okay.
We did the biography. We did anything else you want to share, and then we dropped the grooveradio.com. So
okay.
We got where people can find out more information about you.
Okay, very cool.
Everything.
Thank you so much for having me on, Darren. It was really nice to talk to you, very informative to talk to you. I really believe in what you guys are doing. I think it's really exciting that you're doing it because you're, doing what I'm doing and spreading the word to a bigger audience. And I can't wait to be part of your virtual reality show.
Absolutely. And this is, like I said, one of our outreach things is to start talking to industry professionals like yourself. And it was, like I said, such a pleasure to have you on the show. You're very welcome. And thank you for coming on again.
Okay. Give my best to John Summit and Dave Dresden.
Will do. I will do. And on that note, don't forget to go to our website, thedjsessions.com, where you can find us on all the socials, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, that meta thing, and even find us in the metaverse in our VR nightclubs through Altspace. I'm Darren. That's Egil with GrooveRadio.com. And remember, on the DJ Sessions, the music never stops.
Thank you.
You're welcome.